Shamrock was very smart, by the way, which I really appreciate about him. And at that time, we were wrestling each other every night, so I got a chance to get to know him very well and work out with him. And he was just like, you might just stick with this first. Like, there's a real shot here. Like, you got something here. Stick with this. And if you remember, he started in pro wrestling.
Yep.
And then went over when you were there, right, in the early days of the UFC.
Yeah, he was dominant in MMA in the early days. He was one of the first guys to figure out conditioning. His gym, the Lion's Den, was notorious for being absolutely brutal with their strength and conditioning routines.
Yeah.
They would put people through a fucking gauntlet to join that team. And it was one of the most difficult teams to join. They were like legendary sessions that they would put you through. They would try to break you.
Yes.
And he would just try to let you know, like, the worst thing you want to be in a fight is tired. And you are going to get tired of training with us so that the fight's going to be easy.
Easy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they developed some amazing fighters.
Yeah.
So many. The early days of MMA. His brother Frank was one of the very best. He was one of the very best complete MMA fighters, in my opinion. The first truly complete MMA fighter we saw, and a guy with insane cardio.
Insane.
And that was one of the things about Frank, is that he could just go forever.
Yeah.
And he, like, when he beat Tito Ortiz, Tito was much bigger than him, stronger than him, and he just overwhelmed him with volume and cardio, and eventually beat his ass.
I remember that.
It was, and that taught Tito a giant lesson.
And he was in crazy shape too.
Crazy shape.
Both of them.
Jacked.
Yeah.
Jacked.
Frank and Ken.
Yeah, and Frank was fighting. I mean, he had been training for like a year and a half, and he was fighting in Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, just insane. But he was just a quick learner and just fully committed. And by the time he became UFC champion, I mean, he just had an arsenal of skills.
Yeah.
He was the first truly complete MMA fighter, and people, for whatever reason, they forgot how good he was.
Yeah.
But he was, in my opinion, the first real complete, like fully well-rounded submission artist. He could knock you out. He was a dog in a fight.
Yeah.
Just incredible conditioning, built like a god.
Yeah.
He was the first.
Let me ask you this about these guys. Say, for example, to take Frank Shamrock, Ken Shamrock, whom I know, I love that guy, Mark Kerr, who I've gotten to know very well. Do you think these guys, I don't want to say were they ahead of their time, because they were all founding fathers.
Yeah,
right?
they're pioneers.
Pioneers, man. How do you think those guys would fare today, even with the insane mindset that those guys had, right? I feel like with the different kind of coaching, how they were coached back then, I feel like they would still dominate.
I feel like all champions have a quality that in any era, depended upon the skill level of that era, they would rise to whatever that skill level is.
Yes.
What's going on today is you've got guys with 1-2 fights in the UFC that are elite fighters. They might have 30 amateur fights, and 11. Yeah, you're getting these guys that are competing now that are first fight in the UFC. They're world class. You see like how smooth and technical they are. You're like, Jesus Christ, these guys are so good. Back then, that wasn't the case. So you could get away with a lot more, and you didn't have as high a bar to aspire to. But champions rise to the level of competition that's around them.
That's right.
And I think guys like Frank Shamrock or Ken Shamrock or Hoist Gracie, they would rise today. They would all rise today because they're champions. This is like there's a mindset.
That's right.
They would just have to do things differently, and they would have to check leg kicks.
In what way?
They would have to know every aspect of it. Like Hoist in the beginning, very little striking. He would just kind of throw kicks just to try to get a clinch and get a hold of you, and his jiu-jitsu was so superior to everybody's. But that's not good enough today.
Yeah.
Like now everyone's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Now everyone knows how to move on the ground. Now everyone knows how to defend, and everyone has nasty stand-up. And you have to have everything today. But Hoist would have developed that. He's a champion. There's a mindset of someone who can win one of those gigantic tournaments that he won, like in the early days. He's fighting guys 270 pounds. When he fought Dan Severn.
Multiple fights a night.
Multiple fights a night.
Yes.
Yeah. The champions are champions. And the thing is, the level of competition today is so high that it's like there's more required of everyone. But I feel like champions are a very unique breed of individual, and champions would rise in any era because they would figure out what they need to do in accordance to like what's the competition and who's around them, and they would rise to that occasion.
That's right.
That's what I think.
It's the capacity that they have.
Yeah.